What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy, the Hater, and it's time for yet another episode of Hater Outdoors. As the Hater will soon be moving into his new home, we're gonna get less and less Hater Outdoors. We might still get a few. We're gonna get a few Hater on the roads, but it's gonna be a lot of Hater in the basement. You know what I'm saying? Hater in the studio, Hater underground. You know what I mean? Maybe we'll have Dabakato, because he was around with Raw Underground or Omas or something. Who, by the way, I think is still in the company. Like, what the hell is going on? But anyways, this video is not about Omas or Dabakato, but it might as well be. It's about what I believe is, in my personal opinion, the worst idea in the history of wrestling. That's it. Like, maybe there are some contenders, you know what I mean? Like the Shockmaster, you know what I mean? The Glacier or whatever, who was like a Sub-Zero ripoff. There's a few ideas like that are close, but in my personal opinion, the worst one has to be the Wyatt 6, all right? The Wyatt 6 is one of the worst concepts ever invented for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's predicated upon the death of a wrestler called Bray Wyatt. I was about to say a jobber, but he wasn't a jobber, I guess, right? However, he wasn't a massive star either, right? And it doesn't make any sense to build a faction around Bray Wyatt after he's dead. Now, I understand the plans for this were in the pipeline, but think about it logically, right? When they made these plans, presumably, Bray Wyatt was going to be at the center of this, and Uncle Howdy was going to be like his right-hand man, and he would have a bunch of jobbers that hang out with him. So the idea is dead on arrival immediately, right? Number one. Number two, this group is composed entirely, 100% of the lowest ranked wrestlers, maybe in the history of WWE. You know what I mean? These are people that, quite frankly, brought nothing to the table. Dexter Lumis is someone that had potential with his, Dexter slash kind of American Psycho gimmick, but that didn't pan out at all. For some reason, right? He was one of the only guys that had a gimmick, and they said, not good enough, grow some dreadlocks and act like an idiot while dressed like a buzzard, And the same thing is said about the other characters, right? Now, the other characters, Joe Gacy, he never had an opportunity. Nikki Cross, she sucks, right? And then we've got Eric Rowan, who is right up there with Baron Corbin as the guy that's gotten the most opportunities, in the history of wrestling. Every couple of years, Eric Rowan comes out with a new pseudo gimmick, but in reality, he's just Eric Rowan. He's just a massive bore who has no personality and, quite frankly, who doesn't do anything, He's got some cool moves, but he's not presentable as a giant for some reason. It has never worked. That's why, cucks. And at the center of this circle jerk, we have Bray Wyatt's little brother, right? We got Uncle Howdy himself, Bo Dallas, right? They didn't even have the nerve to rename him. They just said, oh, Bo Dallas is back. Oh, you mean the massive jobber? He's back and now he's leading a faction? Okay, fine. On its face, this faction seemed really, really dumb, and quite frankly, it was. However, the reality is that there is a possibility, or I should say there was, because that possibility is no longer valid, but there was a possibility that they could have done something with this, right? In other words, if you book this group consistently and well, they could be a presence the same way that, for example, Judgment Day is a presence, right? They're not interesting, Judgment Day. Neither are the Wyatt 6, but at the very least, they get decent TV time, And that's something that, obviously, everyone would benefit from, especially the Wyatt cucks. Now, here's the issue. That didn't happen, right? First of all, there's clearly, and there never was, any directionality for this group, right? In other words, they just created the group, and they thought, well, let's put them out there, see what happens. Obviously, nothing happened. The group got a reaction just because it's an intricate concept, right? It's a 5-person stable that is just appearing randomly. You know what I mean? Randomly, they threw this group in there, and that's how they wanted us to react. Now, the group was presented in the beginning as vicious heels, right? This was off of Bray Wyatt's, last run where I don't even know what the hell was going on with that one. He's like, I don't know, man. I'm confused. Uncle Howdy. And I'm like, what the hell? What is he talking about? You know what I mean? Bray Wyatt's cryptic promos are not cryptic promos. They're just nonsense, right? Bray Wyatt has never said anything intelligent in any of his promos. He had the ability to deliver the promos. He was good at that. That goes without saying, you know what I mean? He could deliver a promo. But he was uninteresting as a character conceptually, right? In the beginning, he had some positives. Like, okay, this is a guy with a gimmick. He's going to be presented as a monster. He became world champion several times. But then nothing was elaborated upon, right? And sometimes you don't need that, you know what I mean? The Undertaker was never elaborated upon either, right? Nobody explained why The Undertaker is weird and thinks he's a demon, right? Nobody explained this, we just kind of accepted it, right? And that's fine, If they wanted to present Bray Wyatt, and of course by extension, the Wyatt Six this way, right? Because the idea is this, if Bray Wyatt is just some backwoods retard who is part of or a leader of a cult, that was never clarified either, because he kept talking about Sister Abigail, which sounded like the leader. But anyways, if that's going to be the mythos, if that's going to be the lore of Bray Wyatt, and you leave it at that, perfect, right? But then you have to explain his motivations. He, for some reason, needed to explain like things that didn't need explanations. Like, for example, why is he going after Roman Reigns? And the answer was, anyone but you, Roman. But that's not necessary. He could just go after Roman Reigns because he's an evil guy who goes after people he doesn't like. Simple as that, like The Undertaker, you know? The Undertaker had some motivations that made sense, but a lot of times, in every iteration of The Undertaker, he would just go after people because he didn't like them, right? My favorite Undertaker run was like the bully Undertaker, you know? Where he would just go after people because they were weak and he would just beat their ass. That was great, right? That was a great character arc. But he didn't need to explain every time why he's beating up like, you know, Maven or Crash Holly, right? The implications simply were that Undertaker is a bully and whoever's weaker than him, if they just so much as piss him off, he's gonna beat their ass, right? Like he's gonna make Tommy Dreamer eat the tobacco spit just because he can. You know, a lot of it was implicit. And with Bray Wyatt, that's what should have happened. But they insisted on having Bray Wyatt cut promos, right? And in his promos, he would say, I don't know, man. You know, Sister Abigail, she watches us. Watches you, why? Who the fuck is Sister Abigail? None of these questions were answered. Now, I know some of the enthusiasts in the internet think they found the answers. Like, oh, one time in a promo, he mentioned this. Shut the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Shut the fuck up. I want to know explicitly what Bray Wyatt is doing in wrestling if he's retarded, right? Either don't explain it at all, like Kane. He came because he wanted revenge on the Undertaker. Then he stuck around because he's Kane, right? He's just a retard with a mask who attacks people because he's Kane. That's as simple as that. But because they tried to elaborate on Bray Wyatt, now you've opened that gate and the questions come in. So, in his recent run, before he passed away, rest in peace, the focus was on a character called Uncle Howdy, who was effectively a corrupting force for Bray Wyatt. Here's the problem, right? Let's just say that was true. Why is this happening? Who is Uncle Howdy? It was revealed to be Bo Dallas. And what is Bo Dallas's or Uncle Howdy's motivation? Now, again, you can just say he's just an evil guy, but then you have to present him as a heel, which is what they did in the beginning. But because then they had no follow-up, right? They didn't know what he was going to do next. So they put him up against Chad Gable, who was also a heel. And Chad Gable was like, yo, this sucks, you know, da, da, da. He kept complaining, so all of a sudden, the Wyatt family, the Wyatt Six, have to be faces. But hold on a second. Faces don't go around attacking production crew. Faces don't do these things. But they're faces anyways. Then they continued to feud with Karrion Kross in what basically was a complete waste of time for everyone involved. Karrion Kross hasn't been on TV since in a wrestling capacity, and obviously neither have the Wyatt Six. This was in like December or some shit. You know what I mean? This was like a minute ago. Maybe not December. Was it December? I don't know. It was a while ago up in this mug, you know? And now we're in March, you know? In 3 months, it's the 1 year anniversary of the Wyatt Six, and they've had 3 matches or maybe 4 matches. So, with that being said, if the Wyatt Six was going to be presented as just like a one-time tribute to Bray Wyatt, fine, you can tolerate that. It's a bad idea because there's 5 people involved. You have to write 5 paychecks to do this, but hey, but that's not how they're presented, right? They're presented as this ominous force that was eventually drafted on SmackDown and has yet to debut. This is after months of watching like equally cryptic taped confessionals. Nobody wanted me. Like, nobody cares. Nobody wants you now, Joe Gacy. Nobody gives a fuck about anybody in this group, as evidenced by the fact that nobody is clamoring about them. This is the most coverage they've gotten in months, is a hater video. So they should be ashamed of themselves. Now, because there's no motivation for the Wyatt Six, the question then remains, or at least becomes, why are they even around, right? Why do we have to consider them as a powerful force if all they do is come out and just attack people, then get their asses beat by Karrion Kross, who is an undercard jobber, right? Karrion Kross is like one of the lowest guys on the card. I don't care, like, if he appears and does promos, he does nothing else, right? His group was fired. That was a colossal failure. I mean, which you could have seen it coming 100 miles away, but nevertheless, that's what happened. So they lost to the lowest ranked guy. This would be like, let's say you want to push someone into the main event like Braun Breaker, then you have him lose clean basically to, you know, Ashanti the Adonis. Well, you might as well just fire Braun Breaker at that point, right? Or at least, if you must rehabilitate him immediately. Clearly, the powers that be, Triple H and friends, Triple H, Nick Khan, and Lee Fitting. Remember him? Who the fuck is Lee Fitting? These guys don't care about the Wyatt Six. How could they? I mean, it's their creation, but how could they, right? And this brings me to a point. Eric Young, who is an exceptional wrestler, was supposed to be one of the members of Wyatt Six, and he was like, I didn't want to do it under Vince McMahon. Well, you clearly also wouldn't want to do it under Triple H because you wouldn't be doing anything. You'd be sitting on your ass. I mean, you'd be getting a paycheck, but you'd be sitting on your ass doing nothing, you know? And the reality is, like, the next time we see the Wyatt Six might be the last time. Like, what are we going to see from these people again? You know, they never show up. It's unclear why they are here in the first place. And it's equally unclear why they are together. That's another thing that's never been addressed. In other words, why the fuck did Nikki Cross, Joe Gacy, Dexter Lumis, and Eric Rowan go with Bo Dallas? You can make the point about, like, Eric Rowan because, you know, he owes something to Bray Wyatt or whatever, right? But the other three people, right, are complete random motherfucks. They're just people that are there because you need 6 people. Now, if they had put, like, someone of value there, then this group could have had some perspective and some prospective. The fact is, when you put these many jobbers that wouldn't be on TV otherwise, the logical reason behind that would be to give them TV time, to give them an opportunity, perhaps to give Dexter Lumis a shot at being on TV. Then maybe you can leverage into like a Dexter Lumis run at some point, or whatever, Joe Gacy or Eric Rowan or Nikki Cross. But the fact of the matter is, none of these things are happening. And this brings me to basically the conclusion of this video, which is that once again, the hater was 100% right. I was right from day one. Every other person in the comments was like, give them a chance. This is going to be great. This is going to be amazing. And all of them were wrong as usual. I can smell a failure from a mile away. So when people are going to be inevitably surprised that Trick Williams and Obafemi and Tony D'Angelo and Eddie Thorpe and these guys end up being a bunch of jobbers like Carmelo Hayes has, which I also predicted correctly, then people are going to be like, what happened now? Who are you going to blame it on now, cucks? You're going to blame it on Vince McMahon? He's not around anymore. Now you got to blame it on Triple H because it is his fault. Now, I will give Triple H some credit. There is nothing anyone intelligent could possibly do with the Wyatt Six. They are dead on arrival. They are uninteresting. They are only interesting because they have an elaborate entrance, right? And because they might attack somebody. That's it. Otherwise, they don't do anything we haven't seen before. They didn't even try. Like, for example, Dexter Lumis, when he pinned someone in a match, he did like a top rope splash with theatrics, right? And they put this splash in the video game for some reason, right? It's just like a botched top rope splash. And they put the botched top rope splash in there. How about give him an interesting finisher that we're going to remember and we're going to talk about? Kind of like Logan Paul's move, you know what I mean? How about you do these things so that people can be excited about what they're seeing on TV? But if there's no follow-through, meaning that you're just going to present these jobbers and then not explain anything about them in nearly a year, and every time you try to explain something about them, you don't even know what they're doing, so you do these cryptic promos of how they're all lost souls. So what, motherfucks? A lot of people are lost souls. Who gives a shit? Why should I care about the Wyatt Six? Right? It seems to me that the only reason why anyone would care about the Wyatt Six is because they liked Bray Wyatt. And that is not a compelling enough reason. Just because Bray Wyatt was over doesn't mean that Bo Dallas can do the same thing. In fact, Bo Dallas is right up there as well with Eric Rowan and Baron Corbin, right? In the category of how many fucking chances does this guy need before we conclude that he is just terrible at wrestling, right? He had a few shining moments. For example, I believe the Believe gimmick was pretty fun. It's an NXT level gimmick, but it could have translated into something good if they kept pushing him. Beyond that, it's complete garbage. From that, well, before that, he was just Bo Dallas, the jobber, right? Then he became Believe. Then after that, he went to Raw, then went back to SmackDown, right? Remember? Then after that, they gave him like a serious gimmick, right? Where he would just come and seriously just beat people up. And then he had like a picket sign gimmick. Then he joined the B team with The Miz, which was another glowing point. I attribute all of that to Curtis Axel, who, unlike Bo Dallas, has had very few opportunities and has consistently gotten himself over. You know, he was riddled with the Curtis Axel gimmick, one of the worst concepts of all time. They made him a Paul Heyman guy, and Paul Heyman really showed how good he is at making stars by doing absolutely nothing to help Curtis Axel. But subsequently, Curtis Axel started the Skull chance, right? That got over. Then we had Axelmania. That got over, right? This guy got himself over multiple times, despite creative giving him things like a name like Michael McGillicuddy, you know, which is, you might as well call him Jobber McJobberson, you know? This is not the name of a WWE champion. This is the name of a guy that comes out and gets his ass beat, which is exactly what he became, right? Even Ryback, remember Ryback and Curtis Axel? That was awesome. You know, they were hilarious together, you know, the big guy, right? And Curtis Axel, who was there. They were basically, their gimmick was so nuanced. They were these two disgruntled Paul Heyman guys. That should have been their overt gimmick. They should have been like, Paul Heyman sucks, look at us. He ruined our careers. Ryback was better before Paul Heyman, and he was better after Paul Heyman. And same thing with Curtis Axel. But that's neither here nor there. With respect to the Wyatt 6, we have Bo Dallas being given yet another chance. Like before the whole Wyatt 6 thing, he had like the, what's it called? The B team, go, or whatever, right? Then they had the Social Outcasts when he was with a bunch of jobbers like Heath Slater. Then he got fired, right? Despite having like 5 or 6 opportunities to get over. He got fired, and now he's been rehired again and given another element of a gimmick that he's gonna fail at as well, right? That not he's gonna fail at, that he has failed at, because this thing is done, right? It's fucking over. If anybody is excited about the Wyatt 6 ever again, they're just insane. The only way to rehabilitate this group would be like if at the end of WrestleMania, John Cena is about to win and the Wyatt 6 attack him. That would be the only way. Like, they would have to like main event WrestleMania, which is obviously not going to happen, right? That's the only way to make them interesting. They would have to have some sort of big impact. And their big impacts are always like going after undercard jobbers like The Miz and struggling to beat them. In fact, they lost to The Miz and Karrion Kross, right? Think about that for a second. This group has no purpose, right? They have no direction. They really have no gimmick if you think about it. Because what is their gimmick? They're the Bray Wyatt fan club? Okay, so what? Why are they there? You know? Why isn't the Randy Orton fan club there? Right? It doesn't make any sense. None of this makes any sense, right? They didn't connect it to any of the previous lore. Maybe Sister Abigail possessed him or something. I don't know. Come up with something. I know it sounds stupid because it is, but come up with something. Instead, they came up with fuck all. They came up with absolutely nothing, and then they thought to themselves, man, I really hope this works out, right? And it didn't. Nobody cared. They probably sold no t-shirts, and as a result, Triple H was like, oh, fuck it. Just shelf them. Shelf them until their contracts expire, and then maybe rebrand them, maybe like get rid of like Dexter Lumis and Joe Gacy and hire, you know, AOP, I don't know, someone more believable to be 2 new members. I don't know what they're going to do, and quite frankly, I don't care. Neither do you, and realistically, neither does Triple H or Nick Khan or that mysterious character Lee Fitting. Who the fuck is Lee Fitting, right? This is just the facts, right? The hater spits truths all the time. I spit hot fire, you know what I'm saying? The reality is that this gimmick was dead on arrival, just like I said approximately a year ago. And a year ago, everybody was on board. Oh, the Wyatt 6 is going to be great. Not all of you, of course. The haters, fans come in many different shades, shapes, and colors, and opinions, obviously, right? And the reality is that some of you were smart enough to be like, yeah, this is like a dumbass idea, right? And, you know, some of the smart ones also thought that it was a good idea, but, you know, we all make mistakes. It's not a problem. The hater makes mistakes too. But come on, guys. Come on. Are you excited for the next time you see the Wyatt Six? Imagine being someone who was there the night that they debuted. They probably went home thinking like, wow, I just saw something special. I saw the beginning of what's going to be a master group, like a group of beasts, right? And that's not what happened at all. What happened was nothing happened, and now they're complete jobbers, you know? The facts are the facts. And the facts don't really care about the opinions of uninformed people, including Triple H and Lee Fitting. This was a terrible idea from the beginning. It is a colossal waste of money, right? And it's a complete waste and honestly disrespect to people like Dexter Lumis and even Joe Gacy, who for decades at this point, or at least like, you know, a decade and a half, they've been out there grinding in the indies to get an opportunity. Like, and both were demoted, right? Dexter Lumis had a good gimmick, you know? Fucking, what's it called? Joe Gacy had an excellent gimmick. Not the schism, that was stupid. But the gimmick of Joe Gacy, like the one where he was like an SJW, that was awesome. That was hilarious. Remember when Joe Gacy was an SJW and he challenged for the NXT Cruiserweight title despite being fat because his argument was like, you know, don't judge me on my weight? That's hilarious. It's topical, it's interesting, it's fun, and he played it well. He had something there and they ripped it away from him. They put a pig mask on him and they said, now go over there. You're now Huskus. Dumb fuck. And that's the problem. Instead of taking jobbers with no personality like Sami Zayn and saying, hey, you're now called Mercy the Buzzard, Kevin Owens, you're fat, you're now Huskus the Pig. That would have been more compelling because Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn are not compelling. But they took two guys that had gimmicks and they're like, we don't like this gimmick. We can give you another gimmick that's far lower, more humiliating, and quite frankly, just an utter embarrassment to wrestling, right? Because these guys' existence is predicated on the fact that there was another wrestler who was better than them called Bray Wyatt that unfortunately passed away. So with that being said, as far as I'm concerned, the Wyatt Six are dead and buried. They might appear after WrestleMania, but quite frankly, would you all be surprised? Would any of you be surprised if the Wyatt Six just never showed up? They all just got released because all you need is for Bo Dallas to be released and then that's it. Then the other two can come back as like regular people. It's kind of like when Retribution fell apart and they were all like these weirdos, right? So you had like Dominic Dijakovic, who I think was a talent, right? And he was T-Bar. And you had fucking Mace, who was like whatever the fuck he was. He had another name too, right? I think his name was Mace actually. Anyways, who cares? And then you had like Shane Thorne. Was his name Shane Thorne? Right, he was like Slapjack. This was literally the same thing. It was like, oh, we have 5 jobbers who are doing nothing. Let's try to make something out of this. And it failed. And then do you remember how difficult and impossible it was for these people to reinvent themselves? Because it's hard to go back to being Dominic Dijakovic with a cool look, massive build, and great moves when you've been T-Bar, right? It's hard for Mace, who has a lot of gifts. He's a big, strong guy, right? Tall as a tree, right? Decently good looking. This guy could have been a star. But how can you be a star after they give you like the gimmick of Mace, a retard in a mask, you know? And now Dexter Lumis, Nikki Cross, whatever, fucking Joe Gacy, Eric Rowan, they're all being given the same gimmick of a retard in a mask, and it's not going to work out. So in here, you can see the pattern. The pattern is very self-evident. The idea is we have nothing for these guys at all. So what can we do? Well, let's try to milk them dry for like maybe like, you know, a t-shirt or two and just hang their name on like the name of a dead wrestler and see if they push some merchandise. Because there's no way that anybody had any plans for the Wyatt Six, nor did they have any plans for Retribution. These were two groups that were heavily advertised because they expected them to sell shirts, I guess, right? But Mustafa Ali's then shit promos, now he's a little bit better, he's a little bit more charismatic. I will give him props, you know what I mean? Mustafa Ali he's definitely an overachiever, you know what I mean? This guy should have been a complete nobody, but at least in the indies, he's somewhat relevant, you know? So there you have it. With all that being said, that's all I gotta say about the Wyatt Six. I don't think we're gonna make another video about these jobbers until obviously the inevitable release that they're all going to experience. There is no way, and the hater means no way, that these guys are going to have success, at least with this current iteration. Anything's possible. Bo Dallas might get 10 more chances for all we know, right? And maybe one of them will hit, but I highly doubt it, right? You cannot take a jobber ever and present him seriously. The only way to do so is to take a jobber and push them to the moon, like they did with Jinder Mahal, Drew McIntyre and Cucky Rhodes. Otherwise, it's not believable. It's just not believable. So that being said, motherfucks, take care of yourselves. Go fuck your own asses and kiss mine. What do you think of them apples? I'll see you guys tomorrow with another video. I believe tomorrow's video is going to be 25 reasons why Rhea Ripley sucks. And until then, take care of yourselves, cuckolds.